Now let's go to Stan in the radio booth. Stan.
Thanks, Ann. We're here with Brad Pontius, and Ann was talking with a couple of people about what it means to sustain one of these relief efforts, especially after things like the Haiti earthquake are no longer in the news. You've been involved with a couple of long-term efforts in China and Honduras. What does it take to keep people interested and keep the momentum up so that there is this long-term relief effect?
I think first it takes some long-term vision to realize that it's not just kind of a Band-Aid effort that we're interested in doing to meet immediate needs, but that people's lives have been changed permanently as a result of a natural disaster. And many times after the dust settles and after the initial rebuilding starts is when we can motivate people to go in and do specific projects like help with a medical clinic, makeshift at first, and then maybe help build one in a community that wasn't there 3 or 4 years ago, that was people who began as squatters and ended up building homes in a community that didn't even exist.
And you were telling me you did something like this in Honduras.
Yes, we did. In fact, we're going with a group of IU students in a couple of weeks right after graduation back to a community that 3 years ago wasn't even there as a result of Hurricane Mitch. People who lost their homes moved their way up the mountain, and now there's a medical clinic there that we helped to build, and we're engaging the people with food, clothing, shelter, and medical assistance as a result of that. It's just several years beyond the disaster.
And how has that engagement of the indigenous people worked to the benefit of your effort?
Well, you know, kind of a mantra that we function by is allow the world to change you so you can change the world. So by helping young people and professionals engage real needs in a world that is really next door to us but we don't see very often, helps to change hearts, change minds, change lives. We watch students put these kinds of relief efforts in their life plan from here on. Once a year, a couple times, a couple weeks a year, they'll whatever they're doing, they'll include in their vacation plan, a trip somewhere to do some kind of assistance or some kind of aid. So that helps us in the long run.
We often hear that students, especially college students, are among the groups that are most likely to contribute their time and their effort, a lot of times through school-sponsored service projects, to some of these relief efforts. What happens when those students grow up, for lack of a better term, when these students get to be 30, 35, 40 years old? Does it become difficult to keep their interest in these things, or do you see a drop-off at some point in the statistics of who is participating in these relief efforts as they drag on for some time?
Well, you know, life happens, people get busy, but as the seeds of service are planted, there is a payback that comes more internally, I think. There's a hole that's filled when you forget yourself and serve someone else that doesn't go away. And sometimes I find people in their 30s or 40s are kind of yearning to have that experience again, and it's just hard to detach from jobs, from family, from, you know, the needs of the day to do it. But most people who go have a desire to do that kind of thing again, just because of the satisfaction that comes when you spend your time helping someone else who has greater need than you do.
Are you able to stay in touch with the people you help in between going to their countries?
Well, it depends. If it's a return effort, which many of our efforts on this side of the world are, yes, you stay in touch with them, see them the next time around. I left my pocket knife a couple years ago at the security station with a fellow who only had 2 or 3 teeth in his smile. And 2 years later, when I went back, I went to shake his hand, and he handed me my pocket knife back. I mean, it's that kind of relationship that you build. Definitely appreciation on their side, and a desire to know us as much as we have one to know them. So it's a great bridge builder.
All right. We'll get back to this conversation in just a minute. Right now, though, we'll go back to Ann in the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Stan. We were talking about sustaining the efforts, the humanitarian efforts, but one of the points that we were talking about right before the show, Les, if you can kind of go with me on this, is that the perception that relief efforts are not doing what they're supposed to sometimes is there after a while. Tell me what you mean by that.
2 days after the earthquake, in a class I teach this semester at the journalism school, we had a reporter from the Washington Post who'd covered many disasters come join us in class. And she said something very interesting. She said at the beginning of a relief effort, the relief agencies can do no wrong. In a short period of time, the relief agencies can do nothing right. And we asked our class to write down a number. How many days will it take before that story turns? And it turned out the number was 17 days, about 3 weeks. And
Wow.
we think it was something like this as well. We didn't keep track of it, but after 9/11. So it's about 3 weeks. And what's going on then? Well, I think there are two things. First of all, people are very motivated by the scenes of suffering and hardship they see, and very generous. We do the texting and other kinds of message. Instant giving really picks up at a time of a disaster like this. But that dies down after a couple of weeks, and then people start asking, and the media in particular start asking, so what's happening to the money? And it's a kind of no-win situation for the relief agencies, because if they got all the money that was given out there right away, it wouldn't do as much good as if they gave it a little bit as a time. As you begin to see, you obviously want to deal with the immediate hardships, but you also want to make sure the money that's being donated will be there 6 weeks, 6 months out when people are, as we heard, still in need.
Sue, can you talk to me about how this perception may be a hindrance to organizations such as yours?
Well, of course, the American Red Cross we're part of a global network. And so especially in Haiti, that was an effort that was spearheaded by the Federation of International Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. We were one partner
Right.
with about 40 member agencies. And I think, as Jonathan could attest, for a relief agency in an international disaster of this scope, there are so many incredible challenges just to get the aid to where the people are. You know, you have governments, you have all of these, you know, international relief agencies trying to work together, and then you've just got the devastation on the ground. And so it is difficult when you see the kind of the impatience of people to think, well, my compassion is there instantly, so the solutions need to be there instantly. So I definitely agree with
It's an interesting way of putting it, that they want to see solutions immediately, and we can't see that. Jonathan, you see the same thing from the...
Sure, yeah, and I guess from being on the ground there, you can certainly attest to how you can't just pour in a bunch of money and say, now go do something, in a place where it's really a logistical nightmare to do anything. For instance, we would load food and try to distribute 2.5 million meals throughout the month that I was there. That's how much we distributed. But it sounds like a fairly simple process in the United States to put 800 boxes of food on 2 trucks and go deliver it. But when you're in Haiti and people are really hungry and even starving, you have to have a military convoy arranged with you. And then you have to go to the United Nations, to maybe World Food Program or Food for the Poor, to help you find enough food to be able to do that. And they may not speak English, and you may not speak, surprisingly enough, maybe Sri Lankan, something that's not even related to Haiti. But so you have to go to that, and then you bring it to the site, and people aren't there on time, so you have to wait. But the military wants to, the military wants to leave. I just say all these things to say that it really is logistically almost impossible to understand until you see it, how difficult it can be when the roads aren't there, when roads have been washed out.
Right.
You know, somebody after Katrina once wrote a column for the New York Times in which he said we should replace FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, with WEMA, the Walmart Emergency Management Agency. And of course he was onto something very important, because Walmart it's made its business success by mastering logistics. It gets things into those big boxes when you want to buy them. And that's what we need in a disaster relief. It's very difficult to do.
We'll get back to that in just a minute, but